Hello, everyone, and welcome to test-taking strategies for essay and free response tests. This workshop is being recorded, so this will be distributed on our social media and on the MyTCC app. I am hosting both test-taking strategies and study strategy workshops all this week as we lead into finals for the spring 2020 online semester. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this workshop. Today's workshop objectives are to understand the different types of essay or free response questions and what they are used to measure. Describe what the best strategies are for taking a essay or free response test. And then I'm going to explain what your professor is looking for in your free response or your essay test. Before we jump into those, let's start with something that we're probably all very familiar with, and that's a class objective or your class objectives. These are usually found on your class syllabus. It's probably something that you skim over very quickly on the first day of class, and you as a student probably don't return back to them at any point. But these are a great place to start when you are preparing for taking any type of exam or any type of test. These class objectives are what you as a student are expected to learn in the class, and they are all based on something called Bloom's taxonomy. Now, Bloom's taxonomy, I don't expect you to remember that, but it is this pyramid that we see on the left-hand side. It is to remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. This goes to show that there are different levels of learning. You start from the bottom of the pyramid and sort of work your way up to the top of the pyramid. And it goes from lower level learning to higher level learning. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that one is easier than the other. For some people, applying concepts may be easier, creating may be easy for them, but it does show more lower level learning to higher level learning. With all that being said, let's go into the different types of free response questions and how they relate back to class objectives and how they relate back to this pyramid called Bloom's taxonomy. So what do I mean by free response test? I mean a short answer or an essay test. So it's not a multiple choice test. You're not given any answers, but you do have to produce and provide an answer to a given question. And what this does is measures your ability to organize, to think critically, and to communicate information, knowledge, or skills. Most free response questions are going to measure more of these higher level learning objectives. So think about applying or analyzing, evaluating, or creating. But that doesn't mean that lower level free response or essay questions do not exist. They are just less common. So let's go through all of these. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. And take a look at what these types of essay questions look like and what your response should look like in return. So remember level questions. So remembering is simply the identification and recall of certain information or knowledge. And these are most likely to be your short answer questions. The questions may begin with define, label, outline, or state. Here are some example questions. So you can tell from these examples that you're simply being asked to either list out the steps of something, to outline a plot, to recall major functions. This is simply just the recall of information, defining information. You don't have to go into any deeper level or higher level understanding of the information. You simply have to sort of respond back the answer to the question. Understand level questions. So this is, think of level 2, and this is the organization of and selection of different facts and ideas. So think of knowledge and understanding as being um, two different things. To remember something, you may be able to recall it, but you might not be able to give too many details about it. Understanding allows you to describe some of those details. It allows you to explain. You can interpret something, or you may be asked to summarize. Those are all words that questions on this level 2 understand level may ask for you to do. And some examples, in your own words, go ahead and summarize a play or a book that has been read. You can describe the attributes or something, or you may be asked to provide a main idea. These are all questions on that second level, the understand level. Apply level questions. This is testing your ability to use facts, rules, concepts, and principles in order to provide an answer. Think about the scientific method, for example. You may be provided an essay prompt which asks you to use the scientific method, to apply the scientific method to a certain experiment, or may ask you how you would apply the scientific method in a certain scenario. So questions that are asking you to apply may begin with, of course, apply, but you may be asked to demonstrate or give an example of, perhaps a real life example, or to illustrate. And here are some examples. You can tell already that the level of question that's being asked is a bit of a higher level. You want to illustrate how something is an example of something else, or demonstrate why something is significant. Or perhaps you're being asked to apply some sort of literary theory to a passage in a book that you've read for class. Analyze. So now we are on level 4. These are analyze level questions. And this is all about separating a whole into its parts. So being able to break something down. These questions might begin with compare or contrast. You may be asked to compare and contrast something. You might be asked to debate or examine a scenario, or to make an inference, to come to a conclusion about something. Here are some examples of those analyze level questions. Compare and contrast two separate items. You may be asked to provide evidence for something, or to classify. Evaluate level questions. So now we're getting towards the top of the pyramid. This is about developing your own opinion, your own judgment, or your own decision about something. So think about a question where you're given a problem or scenario and you're being asked to either conclude something, defend, give your opinion about, be the judge, or really support an issue or a side of some sort of debate. Evaluate level questions. Do you agree or disagree with a certain topic or scenario? Explain your position and provide evidence for your claim. Or it could be, in your opinion, which has the best scientific support. You can see this is asking you to interject your own opinion, your own thoughts, and your own feelings, and be able to back this up with evidence. And then create level questions. So for some, these are the most creative and the most fun to answer. But this is the ability for you to take different ideas, different themes, different concepts, and to form something brand new. So in these questions, they might begin with compose, create, design, invent, plan, produce, visualize. And here are some examples. You might be asked to design an experiment or create a new solution for something. You might be asked what ideas you can add to a certain concept. It asks for you to create something brand new based on the information that you have been given in class. So now that we've talked about all of the different types of questions that you can be asked on a free response or essay test, let's talk about the strategies for actually taking these tests. I'm not going to go into many study strategies because I do plan on hosting a study strategies workshop for essay and free response tests later on today. That'll also be posted to our social media outlets and on MyTCC. These are strictly strategies for when you sit down to take the test. So this should be a given, but even these simple things, you just have to reiterate sometimes. You want to read the instructions and question very carefully. The first thing that you want to do when you receive an essay test is to identify the verb. You want to underline the action word that is included in the question to make sure that you know what you have to do when you are writing this free response essay short answer question. And this really goes back to what we just talked about. Are you being asked to define something? So are you being asked to either a remember or understand level question? Are you being asked to explain? Are you being asked to create or design something? So is this a lower level learning question or is this a higher level learning question? That's something that you should figure out the moment you receive that test. And then something else that I will always recommend to my students is to perform something called a memory dump. And this could be a very unstructured or even a highly structured outline. Write down everything that you know about what you're being asked in notes format on the test. Now, this might be a little more difficult depending on how you're taking your test this semester due to everything being online. But I always recommend doing this sort of memory dump, whether it's physically on a piece of paper or just in your mind, gather everything that you know about that question. You can include different ideas that you have, random details that you think of, names, dates, really any random thought that you have. So you can sort of keep track of everything that you want to include in your free response. You want to just go back to basics. You don't want to get all fancy here. You really just want to remember that 5-paragraph essay format that you started writing back when you were in middle school. You want to start with 1, the introduction paragraph. So this is where you just tell me about what you're going to write about. In other words, just tell me what you're going to tell me. This is where your thesis statement should be. So your thesis needs to answer the question. You can begin writing your introduction by paraphrasing or rewording the question. And don't take this as an opportunity to write an elaborate introduction. This is just something, a paragraph where you just want to briefly introduce the topic, briefly make your argument, so your thesis, and then talk about how you're going to support your thesis in the next 3 paragraphs. In paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and paragraph 4, so your 3 body paragraphs, that's where you just want to tell me what you're going to tell me. Make your argument, your 3 points in each paragraph. And then for your conclusion, that's your last paragraph. You just want to tell me about what you told me. Once again, does not have to be elaborate, but just once again, sort of reword that thesis. Tell me about what you just told me. Overcoming writer's block. So this is a big one. What happens when you get that essay or you get that test and you know something about it, but the words just are not coming to you? You have writer's block. Don't panic. This is common. Take a moment to once again carefully read over the question. Take a deep breath. You can always do some deep breathing exercises as sort of a stress-reducing activity throughout your test. Glance over the test itself, carefully read over every question. If you can, perform a memory dump, and that can really be just anything that you can pull from your mind, random words that you know go along with this topic, random thoughts that you have, ideas related back to the class. Perhaps drawing a diagram or some sort of image could help you. I know that many people prefer to learn in a visual style, and so sometimes drawing a diagram might help you. Perhaps this is an essay that you're writing for a science class and you're being asked to talk about the function of a cell. Well, maybe it would help for you to draw all that you remember about a cell. And perhaps at that point, as you start to draw it, you'll remember the different parts of the cell. You'll remember the different functions of the areas of the cell. And another thing that you can do is think of a title for your essay. What would you title this essay? If you had written it, what title would you give it? Sometimes that jogs your memory and things start coming back. If it comes down to it, just start getting words down on the paper. But always try to, if something comes back to you and you're not quite ready to start writing about it, perform that memory dump on the side of the paper so you don't forget to go back to it. Feeling rushed is also very common for an essay type exam. You probably will feel rushed because exams are meant to be speeded tests. It shows how well you work under pressure, under a time limit. This is why many classes, when you do have an essay type of exam, they will give you either sample topics or topics that were used in the past, or perhaps they would even give you the essay topic that you are going to go over on the test itself. They'll give that to you ahead of time. There's a reason why classes may choose to do this, and that's because it's important to start practicing prior to the actual test. Like I said, I'm not going to get too much into study strategies for an essay type exam, but make sure that you are reviewing your notes for broad themes and concepts. Think of a broad theme, a main idea, rather than focusing on these minute details. While details may be needed for your essay, if you weren't given the topic beforehand, it's likely going to be a topic that is more broad. So by focusing on that in the notes, you can likely try to guess what the essay question is going to be. Also, give yourself a time limit for answering each question. Ask yourself when you get the test, am I being asked to just answer one essay and I have 60 minutes to do that? Or do I have 3 essays that I have to go through and I also have 60 minutes? That's going to drastically change the depth that you can go into with each question. It's going to change the length of each answer you may have to give. But, if worse comes to worse and you are out of time, finish your essay with some sort of outline or some sort of diagram that shows what you wanted to write for the remainder of that essay. If you were to write nothing, then you would get 0 points. But there is a chance that an instructor may see the outline or the diagram that you finished this essay with and may give you partial points for it. So if you're running out of time, go ahead and finish that essay to the best of your ability with an outline or a diagram. Let's jump in now that we've talked about different strategies for when the test is in front of you and it's go time. Let's talk about what your professor is going to be looking for in those responses themselves. So one is go ahead and proofread before submitting. There are so many just, simple mistakes that can be made when you're writing an essay, especially if it's one that you are, just writing and turning in without having an extended period of time where you can do some extended editing and proofreading, where you can have someone else look over it for you. So what you want to do is make sure to carefully reread your essay, check for 4 different things. So grammar, spelling, punctuation, and clarity. And what clarity means is that you are very clearly getting across the argument or message that you want to get across in your essay. You also want to return back to the question itself Remember, in the beginning, you underlined the action words, the verbs of what you had to answer in this essay. Ask yourself, have you answered each part of the question? If the answer is yes, and you've also gone through and checked for grammar, spelling, punctuation, and clarity, then you're good to go. You also want to avoid these three things. So one is going to be excuses. So at the end of your essay, if you're running out of time, don't write at the end of the essay, I ran out of time, I had a hard time studying for this test, I really wish I had the essay topic beforehand. All of these things can be discussed one-on-one with your professor after the test itself. Use that time that you would have spent, writing out an explanation for how well you feel you've done on the essay to just outline or draw a diagram, something that's going to give you points and not try to make an excuse for what you wrote. Something else that you want to avoid is padding your answer. So I talked a little bit about how in your introduction, you don't want to, over elaborate. You just want a simple introduction. Well, the same is true for your entire essay. You don't want to elaborate on the obvious just to meet a certain word or page count. You don't have to define every term unless you're being asked to define a certain term in your essay. So if something is, obvious, you don't have to over elaborate it. Your professor is going to know what you're talking about. Just, simplify the answer. And then the other thing you want to avoid is too much information. So answer the question that is being asked of you. You do not have to write down every single thing that you know about a topic. For example, say you're asked a question about the American Revolution, the Revolutionary War. You don't have to go into detail about every single event leading up to the American Revolutionary War. You just have to talk about the Revolutionary War. So adequately answer the question that you are being asked. Go back to that action word, go back to that verb, answer that question, and then just move on to the next one. You won't get extra points just because you wrote a lot of information or you had 5 pages. You just want to adequately answer the question that is being asked. All right, so with all of that, I want to wish you a good luck during finals week. I know that is next week, but many of you have tests this week as well. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is here on the PowerPoint itself. It is dzurgas@tcc.fl.edu. If you need any help with preparing for your test, you have questions about the ways that you plan on taking your test, or if you need any help with your study strategies for these finals, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am here to help you and support you during this time, and thank you very much for watching.